This is Coda Radio, episode 31, for January 7th, 2013. Hi everyone, you're listening to Coda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show, taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, Michael Dominic. Hey there, Michael.
Mario, how come the Wii U is not selling?
It's a Luigi here, Mario. I don't know.
No one wants to come into my mansion? With a U at the end? What?
Could you imagine somebody tuning in for like the very first time going, oh no, is this how this guy sounds? I don't think I can listen to this.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, that'd be off-putting a little bit. That'd be a little off-putting. Well, Mr. Dominic, here we are, another week, 31 episodes in a row. This is our second episode or first episode of 2013? Can't keep track. I think it's our first.
First recorded. Yeah, didn't we release one right after the new year, though?
Yeah, first recorded, exactly. Now, you had a big show planned, very in-depth. We're going to talk about languages and development and really get our hands dirty, and then Canonical had to come along and ruin it all.
Yes, so I did say 2013 would be a big year, and Canonical figured, why not the first week?
Let's do it.
Just start off with a bang.
Yep.
So we're really going to be talking about the Ubuntu phone. We do have a little bit of one item in the hoopla because it's kind of related. Okay. But first, we have a few items of feedback.
Right on. All right, let's jump into the feedback. What's our first one?
All right, so a number of listeners wrote in to tell us that the carrier's situation in Europe, we were discussing the contracts in America, how they tend to vary from country to country, but aren't nearly as bad, which is awesome. And a lot of folks do pay as you go, at least in Ireland.
Right, yeah. And buy without subsidies.
Right. Not surprised. Moving right along. So Steve wants to listen to other podcasts, including Coda Radio. So in addition to Coda Radio. So that's just not acceptable.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't understand that question.
But if you're going to be like that anyway, I would recommend, if you remember from episode 21, Ben Morse, he has a podcast called the Port Forward Podcast, which I was on the last episode, actually. I was a guest. Yes. I also like This Developer's Life and the Stack Exchange podcast.
I was going to recommend the Stack Exchange one. Yeah.
Yep. So there's 3 non-platform specific podcasts to get you started.
And we only hate you a little bit, Steve, for doing it.
Only a little. So Steven, not to be confused with Steve.
Right.
Asks, he's wondering if there's any benefit to writing an application for Ubuntu and Windows that would plug into the Ubuntu One API and treat it like a sort of Dropbox. Sure, why not? That's kind of vague.
You know, the app pick I just did yesterday on the Linux Action Show is Nitro. NitroTasks.com is where you find it. And it offers the option to use Dropbox or Ubuntu One for syncing and for authentication. So you actually authenticate to the app and its companion web app through either Ubuntu One or Dropbox. And so they just opted to implement both. And as a user, I really like that. And I got to tell you, when I see that, I'm like, oh, so these guys really know about my platform. So they obviously have probably written a pretty good app for it. Like, to me, it's like this, even if I don't use it, it's a sign as a user that they're at least targeting my platform appropriately. How about that?
I did not know Ubuntu One had authentication now. It's been some time since I've used it.
I didn't know that either until I used this app.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've ever seen it.
Oh, also, if you do have other podcast recommendations, you can certainly email them in. The chat's way too quick right now for me to follow as it goes along.
Yeah, they've listed a few in there. This Developer's Life has not released an episode forever, though, says Snake Doc, by the way.
Yeah, they release one every quarter if they need it or not. They're very slow.
Yeah, not all podcasts are as regular as us.
No, they're not. But, all right, the most important item of feedback, Shane, the great and powerful Shane, I believe the same guy who messes with Java ME, wrote in to agree with me on Qt. And we're going to talk about that in our main topic.
I believe Shane is in the chat room right now, actually.
So, Shane, I truncated the hell out of your email, but there's a reason.
Okay.
Feedback. I'm sorry, not feedback. DevWorld Hoopla, which I mistyped as feedback in the notes. So, Chris, what do you know about Samsung's Tizen operating system?
Oh, boy, the little operating system that could. So it's interesting. This is like Samsung's Plan B. If if for some reason they wake up one morning and Google kicks them out of bed. And it is a straight-up Linux system, and it's been derived from a bunch of other efforts that have gone on in the past.
Now, Tizen is actually controlled by the Linux Foundation, though, right? It's not a Samsung proprietary...
I don't believe it is a Samsung proprietary system. I just believe it's Samsung that is the primary vendor interested in it.
Oh, I see.
Because they're the ones that have done like some test phones running it, as far as I know.
When I first read this, I think I read it maybe last week. I honestly didn't believe it because Samsung is, basically the Cadillac of Android. Why would they be fooling around with something else?
I would be shocked if it shipped in any like major Western markets. Maybe it will.
Is this a developing market play? Is that what this is?
Yeah, maybe. I guess from what I've read, like 2013, the phone makers and carriers really want to focus on the remaining 50% who haven't upgraded to smartphones. And they want to get that to 80% that are on smartphones, and they want like cheaper, more feature-like phones that only do a few things.
I see. So so folks who might find Android and perhaps the whole app ecosystem side of things a bit too complicated.
Or phones, just cheaper phones that need maybe a lighter operating system that's just a little more basic. Because there's no Java here. It's all native.
So I've read conflicting things about that. I've read that, which makes sense. I've also read that they do plan to release full-powered Tizen phones.
Probably. I don't know. I have no idea what they're gonna do. I mean, I think this is just this weird. There's just this weird like. Sometimes companies work on something on the back burner almost as a negotiating tactic with another company, and I would almost even wonder if this is that a little
right,
bit.
Because it feels that way, right? Because Samsung, if you think Android phones, if you're thinking, okay, the best Android phone to compete with an iPhone, you're almost always thinking of a Samsung product each year.
Right.
I mean, last year it was the S3. Before that, the Nexus, which was Samsung. It's a little surprise. I mean, the older Nexus, not the new one. It's a surprising play, and it's interesting that all these phone systems are based on Linux.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it?
So if you wanted to count market share by quote device, I think Linux may actually be very high.
I read I think it was IDG that put out a report that said 42% of all shipping devices are running Android.
Right. So that's very interesting. But speaking of little operating systems that could,
yeah,
our good friends across the pond at Canonical have released. Okay, so we have to stop right here.
Okay, hold up. What is it?
I define releasing a phone as releasing a phone that I can purchase.
Oh, you mean like something you could even maybe would a pre-order count? Would that satisfy?
You know what? If I can pre-order it and get it in less than 6 months, I'll even count that.
Okay, all right, that's pretty generous. 6 months.
Yeah, I think 6 months is being kind.
Yeah.
So they've released Ubuntu Phone, which is, we'll do a quick 101 here. Ubuntu Phone is basically Ubuntu on a phone, hardcore Unity, right?
Yeah, with a customized phone UI.
Yeah. So I have to give it to them. It looks very pretty.
A gesture-based UI.
Yes, another situation where if you don't read the manual, you cannot operate the system.
Right. Every carrier that sells this will have to give every new customer a demo in store and on how to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I actually think it looks nice. This is something I'd probably use. If they were giving them away to developers, I'd probably sign up for that just to check it out, even a loaner copy.
Well, do you have a Galaxy Nexus S floating around?
I have a Galaxy Nexus.
Because, you can pick up the S for really cheap.
Yeah, I know you can flash an image. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, exactly. For development, why not?
Well, so let's slow our roll a little bit. So, Chris, I listened to last.
Oh, you did that? I've heard about that show.
And I've also follow Matt Harley, the host of Last, on Google Plus. And is it fair to say he's chugging the haterade?
Yeah, definitely. He's wearing skeptical pants with maybe like when you can put those beers in a hat and then you got straws that go in your mouth. Yeah, there's a little. He's got like those little haterade in him.
It's like the end of the college football bowl, and he's just dumped Gatorade. Just really.
Yeah. Some folks this time of year watch football. Matt gets online and hates on Ubuntu Phone. No, he's actually not that bad. I kind of kid a little bit, but
no, I'm joking. But
he's definitely skeptical. He's definitely more skeptical than I am.
His initial post was like, bam.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I was a little more positive when I first saw it, and I kept going through the website. So the first thing I did is I wanted to see it from the horse's mouth. So I watched Mark Shuttleworth's little keynote. I went to Canonical's website, and I went to the developer.ubuntu/mobile, which kept crashing. And I kept trying to find where can I register my interest and pre-order a developer phone, even if I had to pay for it, which would have been okay, right? Where can I do that? And I couldn't find anything. And it turns out they don't have anything in terms of a phone you can buy. So I said, okay. I started Googling around. I read the reviews. They don't have anything in the immediate future that you can buy.
Right. Best case scenario is late 2013, early 2014.
And that's, projects always get slipped. So I would say 2013 is out of the question.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the near term is going to be images. That's going to be like the only thing you're going to see in 2013.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I watched the video and they announced it felt very Apple-like.
Yeah, you think? Yeah, I agree.
Just a little, right? Like,
but in the chat room, people are kind of giving him a hard time for that. But I kind of think, as far as taking the best of a Jobsian keynote approach and applying it to what they're doing, why not take a successful recipe? And I want to back up actually a little further than this.
Sure.
There's not a lot of companies out there that have a Steve Jobs-like character that could actually pull this off. Mark Shuttleworth is kind of in a unique position. I mean, Ballmer, there is no way you could see Ballmer doing this. Everybody would laugh at him, right? Larry Ellison, him being up there, he would look ridiculous. He would look old. He would look totally out of place. Shuttleworth, he looks great doing it. He sounds great. He makes great points.
This time, you'll have all the security of Unix in your pocket. You can manage the Ubuntu phone using exactly the same management tools that you use for Ubuntu on the server.
He's got, he's clear-spoken. So, yeah, it is sort of a copy of the Apple style. I'll give you that. But it's well done.
I actually thought the presentation was very good. And in fact, so my progression was I listened to Mark Shuttleworth's presentation, and then I went to Canonical's site. At that point, I was interested in purchasing a device version of this phone.
I know.
It was only until I read, let's say, The Verge's review and a number of other reviews, I guess they sent them Nexuses with it preloaded, that there's some issues.
It's a good sign they're that far, though.
Yeah.
I mean, if they've actually got... And now they're going to be at CES this week, starting tomorrow. So they will maybe be demoing the phone there. We don't know yet.
Yeah, so my question is, they didn't mention tablets.
Right.
And I thought for sure it would be a tablet play first.
Yeah, that seems like a way, 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 way easier market to get into.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and in fact, they haven't even committed to releasing images of this for the Nexus 7. Yeah.
Or even the Zoom tablet, which is virtually useless right now. Yeah, but let's all right. So there is some. I actually do hold out hope, but the dev story is really what makes this a worthy topic.
I really wanted to hear your thoughts on this, so tell me about this.
Called it.
Yeah. So, AKA, told you so, right? That's what you're saying?
Told you so. Based on QML, where you can write native C and C++, that sounds awfully familiar to me. Almost as if they're using Qt. Dun, dun, dun. Called it.
This, to me, in retrospect, kind of seems like their only option, though.
Well, it's also
a great option.
They could have done a funky Java ME or even like Dalvik crazy-ass port. Oh. But that's an advantage. Now that if they're using native code, and we'll talk about the HTML5 side after, but from the Qt side, they're using native code. So there's some intrinsic, especially on a phone with low memory, intrinsic performance gains you're going to get there.
Yeah, and see, I don't know if I said this point eloquently on the Linux Action Show, but I have heard that there are mobile operators out there who have inventory, like Indiana Jones warehouse style inventory of the low-end Android phones that aren't selling. that this is a value proposition for them. Canonical can come and say, you know what, you load. First of all, Linux is known for being well performing, right? So you kind of come in and you say, hey, look, we can reflash these devices for you, and you can resell them. And now they're running a different operating system. They perform better, and you can target them at that 50% who haven't bought smartphones yet.
And that's really the thing, because at the high end, a smartphone with a contract. Although I haven't bought one on a contract in a long time. What is it? $300 basically. It's $200-$300, something like that.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of people who are a little more price sensitive, and maybe they'd swing $100, but would probably rather it be free or $50. Now, the issue there is the lower-end Android phones, the apps might run, but they really don't perform well. They're a bit laggy, and that's just kind of a get-what-you-pay for kind of thing.
Yeah.
But if Canonical can come in with their own device, so not just some second-hand Android handset.
The other thing if Canonical could, and I don't know what their plan is here, but if they have a solid updates path plan where, because right now these carriers, they're in this battle between Google. Is it your responsibility to update the phone, or is it ours? Oh, well, it's ours. Well, we're just not going to do it. We'd rather just people buy new phones. Maybe so Canonical comes along and says, at least they said that in the video. We'll provide the updates, and we'll update the phones kind of a la Apple style and Microsoft style. But I'm not clear on how they're going to deliver those. Like, you can't just have them running Ubuntu Update Manager and downloading patches like you do it now.
Right. So I just want to jump to something in the chat, and then we'll probably talk about that. So SnakeDoc is asking, well, what about memory leaks and crashes with native code? And I will point you to the last 4 years of iPhone. Canonical is not going to let their App Store be a Wild West on the phone. They're going to have to vet them just like Apple does, and just like, they're going to check for crashing and memory leaks. And there's also a sense of the market will take care of that. I mean, there are iOS apps and even Android apps that have memory issues. And you know what happens to them? They get one starred, and then the algorithm in both app stores suppresses them. So you have to know what you're looking for to find them.
Well, in mobile, I would assume they would do something like this, where mobile operating systems are pretty aggressive about killing off applications that start consuming.
Yeah, so the operating system is not going to allow the app to crash the phone. What it's going to say is you failed to respond to, iOS does it. It has 2 levels of memory warning. You failed to respond to level 2, goodbye, and it just kills your app. So all Canonical has to do is that, and it's a very simple fix. And it's because once the app is killed, the system reclaims all the memory. Mm-hmm. So it's not. I know if you're not used to a native environment, it can seem scary, but it's not going to destroy your phone. But they will have to do some. I would assume they're going to do the same kind of vetting they do in their app store, because that.
Yeah, they said they're using the same app store. They're just going to modify it for Ubuntu phone.
Yeah, so they're going to check for things like that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But your point about the carriers is very interesting. I don't think they have to care, and I don't know that the carriers are really going to. So I don't know that Canonical is going to be in a position to convince the carriers to let them get the Apple update deal, because Google hasn't been able to do that.
I think that's more. I think Google's failure is more of an original business setup, the way they've done it. Because, as a carrier myself, I would be very worried about these Android 2.2 phones that are going around that now have, if you watch TechSnap, there is a litany of major vulnerabilities in the software stacks on these older Android phones, and that makes these carrier networks vulnerable to attack. So it is in their best interest to have the operating system current. They have security issues now because of these phones.
Yeah, it's always going to be a battle, and no software is going to be perfect. I think native is a selling point for them because they can get more performance out of less memory, and that's going to be the bottom line. If a crappy dev leaks a lot of memory and their app sucks, well, the App Store ranking algorithm's going to quickly slap them down.
I just picture that working for the low end, that reutilize your existing and the fact that they're taking advantage. They've said that they will be able to use Android drivers, so they don't have to reinvent the wheel on some of these hardware. They can utilize existing inventory. I think that's great for the low end.
So that's what I was going to get to. What about these manufacturers who, let's say HTC has a bunch of unsold Android phones, right, that are maybe last generation, and they don't know what the hell to do with them. They're just sitting on a warehouse somewhere.
Right.
Slap Ubuntu on them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it would probably, if you're getting semi-decent performance on the Nexus S, which is a 2-3 year old phone, I mean,
is it 3 years already? Wow.
I don't know. I can't remember that. I've gone through so many phones, but it's a single core 1 gigahertz phone with a limited amount of memory. That's a great performance, and I would also, although I have no factual basis to base this on, but I would be willing to bet that Ubuntu OS on a phone would probably handle multiprocessors, utilize them more efficiently than Android does. I've heard some arguments that Android barely can take advantage of multi-core itself, and it's up to the apps to take advantage of it. And you got to figure if you had more of a straight-up Linux system in there, maybe you'd take better advantage of multi-core, so you get better performance that way too.
Yeah, well, I mean, the multi-core thing's a basket of snakes because a lot of it does depend on the individual developers, and it's also different on certain versions of Android. So it's really it's a tough situation, and I think Canonical will still have the same problems as Google if they can't control the hardware.
Nexus S is from late 2010, says Hoff in the chat.
Okay, so that's very old.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's very encouraging that that's kind of like their baseline.
Yeah, if that's what they're targeting, this thing's either going to do okay or fail. I mean, I don't think this is going to take the world by storm. In terms of developer community, I think if you already have an Ubuntu app written in Qt, it might make sense to try and make it phone accessible as well.
And BlackBerry 10 can take advantage of Qt, right? Isn't that true? So you can write.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, I'm wondering if as more things move to Qt, it's going to become less of this huge gamble to write for Ubuntu phone. Qt.
I don't think it really is a gamble, right? Because Qt is also coming out with their support for iOS and Android. And they also support Mac and Windows and Linux. So Qt is a pretty decent cross-platform tool if you're really concerned with that. Additionally, if you're in an enterprise, like someone in the chat's mentioning, and you already administer Ubuntu desktops or Ubuntu servers, it might make sense to have a unified system.
It's so funny because I perceive Canonical, and I don't mean to jump ahead here, so tell me just to stop if you want, but I perceive them on the low end, they're going after BlackBerry, and on the high end, they're going after the Surface and things like that on the enterprise level. Because the enterprise, what I think is fascinating about this is they have a very solid low end play, and they also, in my opinion, have a very solid enterprise play. So they can actually capture both ends of the market with different types of hardware in ways that no other phone manufacturer is going to be able to do.
So maybe, I would agree with that if they had announced a tablet.
I think the docking feature is decent.
I think it's so foreign that a lot of people aren't going to really go with it.
Maybe. You might be right. It might not work. But I know I've said it before. I just picture that traveling salesman. He's got his phone in his pocket and he's got his dock in his suitcase.
Possibly. It's interesting to see either way.
Yeah.
So one other note is the HTML5 side. So the alternative development path is HTML5.
Right.
Which they do encourage strongly.
Which they say they have deep integration with HTML5 apps. They say that web apps are first-class citizens on Ubuntu with APIs that provide deep integration into the interface. HTML5 apps written for other platforms can be adapted to Ubuntu with ease. So there you go.
Okay, that sounds nice. And they mentioned PhoneGap by name in their little marketing spiel to developers. So if you have a PhoneGap app running on iOS or Android, it might be easy to port. Now, when they say they have deep integration, I haven't been able to look at the APIs fully because A, I don't know if it's open yet, and B, I don't have a lot of time. I don't know what that means.
I believe it is a continuation of what they introduced in Ubuntu 12.10 based on...
So that's what I thought it would be, the Unity hooks, right?
Yeah, okay. I heard that in an interview, and I've seen so many now that they've all blurred together, but it's like the same, take advantage of the notification center, you can integrate with the HUD, the Unity search, it becomes an icon, you can have badges, stuff like that.
Okay, so that's pretty neat if you're a JavaScript dev.
Yeah.
And I am wondering what percentage of the apps that do launch with, or do come out when this launches, will be native versus HTML.
Yeah, because they're offering what they call glue to make the HTML. So like if you want to take an HTML5 app and then just glue like a little UI stuff here and there with QML or whatever, I don't know. They're saying that you can kind of frame it around a native body, and it looks like a native app. I tell you, man,
they're making a lot of promises.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, if you were the developer site, it's very, very exciting. It's just a lot of promises.
Yeah, and the trouble is they talk about it like a lot of it's already done, so you can't really parse what's still being worked on their end, because if a lot of this is still being worked on, I don't know. They really got to get this stuff pulled together really fast.
Yeah. I mean, I don't... I want to be optimistic, but I'm very cautiously, so... I just think the carrier issue is going to be a big issue for them.
Yeah. And the only way to get into those carriers is by bastardizing the entire user experience, I think.
Right, or not doing updates, and then what are the security implications of that? We've seen how that's played out on Android, and it's rough.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, listen to any recent episode of TechSnap. So I don't know. And also, the reviews from The Verge and some other tech sites have been fairly negative, or at least not good.
Do you remember? I mean, was it just lag?
A lot of it was lag. A lot of it was it felt weird. They didn't understand how to use the phone. They had to be shown, kind of thing.
Oh, right, absolutely. Yeah.
It was not intuitive.
Right. It will be the least intuitive. But the thing is I wonder if by relying on gestures so strongly, you almost are forced to learn them. Like if you could only use keyboard shortcuts to save documents, you'd sure as hell learn how to use, Control S.
But for the market they're going for, I don't know if that makes a whole lot of sense. Right? So if they're going for folks who haven't upgraded to smartphones, I think many of them haven't upgraded because they find them complicated. So to give them something non-intuitive seems like a tough sell.
Yeah, my conspiracy theory here is that the inventory of existing phones have smaller screens and big screens are selling. And one of the things that Mark mentioned is because there's no lower buttons bar, all of your apps can have more screen real estate. So it's like having a bigger screen. And I think that's literally what they were thinking, is maximize screen real estate.
So that's certainly a selling point to manufacturers. I'm thinking if this does somehow get in the AT&T store.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, like I said, every salesman will have to demo it to the customer on how to use it.
And someone's going to have to teach the salesman.
Yeah.
And it's going to be sitting next to, the equivalent of, the second-tier Android phone at the time.
Or say what you will about iOS, but there is absolutely no doubt on how you operate that thing when you pick it up.
Right. It's just very expensive, although some folks might be willing to buy the 4 or the 4S and pay nothing for the 4 and $50 or $90 for the 4S.
Right. I guess that is kind of their competition there, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's... I mean, I looked at this thing, to be honest, I'm not sure if you handed me one today, I could operate it totally.
No, but I would definitely be up for giving it. I'd be willing to give the gesture UI a try. The other thing I would worry about a gesture-based UI is if the phone is lagging because it's working really hard, do those gestures become jerky and unresponsive, and then it's hard to control my phone?
And that's one of the questions we're not going to be able to address until we actually have it. Right, so that's the big thing. We've effectively read some documentation and seen a video.
Can I ask you one more development type question, just your thoughts on it?
Sure.
Just, I know you don't really seem to be interested in this feature at all, but the fact that it can dock, and you could sit at it with a high-res screen and a keyboard and a mouse, and then you could actually develop on the phone for the phone. You can't do that on Windows Mobile, Android, or iOS. You know what I'm saying? So you could actually write apps for that phone on the phone. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, I'm not sure too many people are going to do that.
Well, you might if you had it. I mean, for developers, that might be kind of neat. Now, you just don't care about the docking at all, do you?
I don't know. Why would you develop on a phone docked rather than a full PC?
Picture it. So there you are. You're about to go to some sort of conference. You're there at the conference. It's the night before your big demo at your really nice booth you got, and there's just some last-minute bugs you've got to work out. You just dock your phone, open up the app, and you've got all your latest code right there. You build the app. It's right there. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Not selling you?
Not selling me.
All right. Well, okay. All right.
I'd have to see it. I'd have to see how it performs.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing.
Yeah, they're saying for that feature you're going to need a quote-unquote superphone, quad-core, A10 ARM, I think, just...
Right, so you're going to need a beast of a phone.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, there's a few tablet apps like that on Android that I cool ideas, but I just can't get into it. And it's just not part of my workflow.
Yeah, I know.
But if it was amazing, I'd definitely try it.
Oh, and then of course, like Slips is saying, like they say in the video, you can dock, and then you can use remote login services to get a full desktop from another machine, which could be nice. I as a sysadmin, I think I would like it because I just need terminal and SSH, and I could do a lot of my work through that. It could be kind of nice. I think I would, I would buy a super phone for $500 and then not buy an Ultrabook or a MacBook Air or whatever. But that's just me.
That's a tough sell.
I know. I realize that's not going to work for everybody, but I'm interested in that functionality. I know. I'm such an old guy, I guess. I used to, as a kid, I would dream watching Star Trek of the day where, I was thinking of the tricorder at the time, but now it's become the smartphone where I was like, I would think, why isn't that their entire computer? Like, why don't they plug that thing in and then they sit down at their console and that's like controlling and they can take it with them? And that's what this is. I just think it's really neat.
Yeah, it is pretty neat.
And it also completely removes the need for syncing because everything is self-contained. And I think that's really nice too because syncing's never perfect. And that's where I think for enterprise, for the salesman, for guys like me, sysadmins, I think it has some nice features for that.
All right, well, we'll see how it goes. I'm hopeful, but I haven't seen anything, so it's hard for me to.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't get past it. I know. I can tell what your hang-up is. Your hang-up is the carriers. You don't think it's ever going to get past there, and if you can't get past there, it's a non-starter.
My real hang-up is why bother to make this announcement if you don't have anything to show?
They got to get people interested in shipping it. They got to generate some buzz to get, because otherwise nobody even knows they're on the map.
I feel like they're trying to use buzz to get the carrier as a negotiating chip.
Exactly. Well, he kind of says that in his keynote.
If you're in that position, I don't think you can go very far.
Right.
All right. I think they'll have an easier chance in Europe.
It appears to be the same strategy they used with Ubuntu TV.
Ooh.
I mean, really, I'm not trying to be mean, but last year they announced Ubuntu TV. They kind of had a little bit of a side CES splash, and the whole idea was to generate interest in OEMs to ship Ubuntu on their TV. And unfortunately, we're not seeing it, and nobody really took them up on the offer. And I kind of think the same thing could happen here. I don't really see any reason why it wouldn't, unless. Yeah, I just don't see it. Unless they get images out there, apps are getting made. The only thing that's really kind of moving in their favor is both couple of major carriers in the United States have announced plans for no contract, pay-as-you-go, all-you-can-eat type plans, Sprint and T-Mobile. So, those are some trends that are kind of converging that might help them out a little bit.
Maybe. I mean, I'm not sold, but look, we'll see. I mean, we'll definitely see.
Yeah, I agree with Shane in the chat room. This does seem like a better product that's more thought out than Ubuntu TV. It also seems like it has the full effort and energy of Mark Shuttleworth behind it. I mean, this really seems to be his passion project. And when you got a driven guy like Mark Shuttleworth, who has gotten a lot of things done, maybe they will. Maybe they're already talking to carriers.
Oh, I would hope they're already talking to carriers at this point.
I don't know.
I mean, if they're not talking to carriers by now, that's a bit scary.
Can I ask you though, if you can get past the carrier thing, let's just say that works out. Let's say they're utilizing old inventory, trying to get the rest of the market. It all plays out for them. And honestly, let's be clear. If this works for them, it will be at the cost, I believe, of good user experience. I believe we'll have Verizon and AT&T branded phones. They won't be Ubuntu phones. They'll be Verizon phone. It'll be filled with the VCast service icons. You won't have...
Yeah, and that's another great point. They don't have a Google Play Music or an iTunes.
They kind of have the Ubuntu One music store, but competitively it's...
Yeah, I mean, I think that might be attractive to the carriers, but go on, I'm sorry.
That is the big attraction of the carriers. The big attraction of the carriers is that they can push their own wares and not Apple's or Google's or Microsoft's. And the carriers are really feeling butthurt about being out of the action on this stuff. I mean, they've said they want a piece of the action on every iTunes purchase that happens over their wireless network. And actually, I believe AT&T does get a little piece of the action. And this now allows them to sell all of their content directly. No cut to Apple, no cut to Microsoft, nothing like that. It's all their stuff, any deal they make. So they're going to ship some sort of branded phone. Now, let's say that happens, and let's say it's successful and it gets out in the market. Isn't that then at the peril of BlackBerry and Microsoft and not really so much Android and iOS?
I don't know. I think BlackBerry is an enterprise play.
Yeah, I think this is an enterprise play in a big way. I think this is a really big way. I mean, they've mentioned it. You got Landscape, one central management utility for your desktops, your phones, and your servers. That's powerful. That as an IT organization lets me get organized and manage my stuff. It automates my inventory. I mean, that's nice, right? You can, like I mentioned in last, you could brand it. You can make the Goldman Sachs phone. So big Fortune 500 companies can have these phones that are either completely locked down, or have maybe applications running in the background that monitor what they're doing because maybe there's a little more flexibility there. And this is something that enterprises would be attracted to. So I think there's a real strong enterprise. So if it is successful, we get past the carrier thing. If it is successful, they're kind of taking a little bit of a Windows 8 strategy in the enterprise. One device to rule them all, aka Surface, right? One centralized management system, aka Active Directory group policy. They're kind of going after Microsoft, I think.
It's a phone. That's my hang-up. It's a phone, not a tablet.
But in the enterprise, they'll sell it as a dockable phone.
We'll have to see. The other thing is they haven't actually released a product with any real marketing, so we'll see how they market it.
The carriers will market it because it's not going to be an Ubuntu or Canonical phone. It's going to be the Verizon phone.
Because I could see a very strong carrier argument. I mean, a very strong enterprise argument. I can also see a good low-end play, but I don't think you can be both. And that's, I guess, where my hang. Because I think to be the enterprise, you need to be that super phone to be able to power the full dock. I think to be at the price point to attack the 50% of the market who's not there yet, you need to be for only $100 or even free with a contract.
But don't you think that maybe as things like the Nexus 4 get more popular, these types of devices will trend more towards how PCs are now, where you can load any operating system you want, only now you're loading an image. So I
don't think so, because the carriers will have a fit.
But as long as you have companies like Google selling Nexus 4s directly, why not just go buy one of those and load an Ubuntu image on it? As an enterprise, I could just buy 1,000.
You can, but so let's maybe in the enterprise, but I sincerely doubt that.
Yeah, it's kind of grasping at straws.
Even if you look at the current PC market, most enterprises don't buy blank PCs and pay for them. They have a contract with Dell or HP, and they buy, pre-configured Windows, whatever. But they do also have their volume licensing deal.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes with volume licensing, they do have to pay, so that way they can take off Windows 8 and put 7 on that they have volume licensing.
Or do their backporting or whatever it is they're doing.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's a real long shot, but if it works out, and I think they've picked the right development strategy, at least.
All right, we'll see. Because I'm not sure about the docking strategy, but here's the thing: it's one of those things that no one's really tried it in with a big push.
Yeah,
like no one's made it.
Palm did. Remember there was that Palm docking, and the Atrix. There's that Motorola phone that docked.
But Palm was already in trouble.
Yeah.
Palm. This is the platform's first push, and their selling point is basically we can dock, and we can be your mid-range PC.
Yeah.
So I would be interested in seeing how that goes, and I'm just not sure.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, because no one's really done that as their main selling point. There's been a few Android phones here and there. You mentioned the Atrix, but really that was a manufacturer add-on. This is built into the OS.
Yeah, that's true. Properly. And it's an OS that's already established. It's not like some one-off splash top custom-built environment. It's Ubuntu.
It's certainly an exciting thing, and I think they have an opportunity. The problem is there's really not a lot of data. And I think it's very hard, given the market, to consider this a win right now.
Yeah, it got everybody's attention for a day.
For sure, yeah.
And now until something ships, nothing's going to happen.
And that's a whole strategy issue that I think is kind of crazy, but hey.
Now, don't you think the sort of leaning towards QML and Qt and C++ kind of indicates the future direction of the Ubuntu standard desktop as well?
That's what I was thinking. Are they just going to adopt a version of Qt with some extra library extensions?
Do you want me to play the Mark Shuttleworth clip on it?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
If you're a developer, then there are lots of ways to get your app onto the Ubuntu phone. The easiest is to use our web app framework, which is exactly the same as the desktop web app framework that first landed in Ubuntu 12.10. You can integrate your website as an app directly into the launcher of the phone, and you can take advantage of all of the system services like status icons, notifications, menus, and the HUD. So you can create web apps for Ubuntu that are much better integrated into the phone than any other platform. And it's really easy. We consider HTML5 to be a first-class development environment. If you're currently targeting the iPhone and Android with HTML5, then it will be easy to add Ubuntu as well. But you know that HTML5 has some limitations. So we've built a native application development environment for the phone. It uses QML to give you a really slick, easy development experience for touch apps that can have their engine written in C or C++, and also use JavaScript for some of the UI glue that isn't performance critical. QML has full access to OpenGL, so those native apps can have really amazing effects and transitions. The QML toolkit and sample application are available for download today. So those of you...
Now, so that's about the phone he's talking about there, but remember, they're going to be distributing this through the Ubuntu Software Center. They expect these apps to also work in docked mode. So to me, it sounds like this is also, we've talked, what was it, a few weeks ago, a month ago, about they've announced that eventually they'll have an Ubuntu SDK. I think we're starting to see the very beginnings of that right now.
Yeah, I am wondering if the Ubuntu SDK is just a version of Qt.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and technically that makes a lot of sense. I don't find any fault with that.
Yeah, that would be one of the better moves they could make, right?
Yeah, I think so. As far as I know, I just heard great things about QML, and it's also the same. QML is also what Plasma Active uses. So there could be some interesting.
And as Grey Wolf in the chat mentions, Qt does have bindings to pretty much every language, including Python.
Yep.
So you really won't be alienating anybody by doing this.
Smart move. That's probably one of the better parts of it. I mean, if there's going to be any infrastructure stuff they've done to make this thing successful, that's probably one of them. And he did touch on there. That's how they're doing the app integration. You even get system tray icons and things like that for HTML5 apps. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think this will go Qt because it makes me write, and that's what's really important here.
I mean, that means I could theoretically have a Jupiter Broadcasting HTML5 app that could put a notification icon in somebody's tray when a show's live. Could be like the Jupiter Radio app that lights up when we're doing a show. And it could just be, and I could write it in HTML5, I could write it for several platforms. But on Ubuntu phone, I can take advantage of notifications and stuff like that. Very cool.
Yeah, I think you definitely could. And I hope it turns out that Qt is the way they go. Because that makes more sense than anything else they might do.
Si, senor. Si, senor. Now we just wait for the real market disruptor, Firefox OS.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that and Tizen are going to just tear it up, I'm telling you.
Yep. We're going to come in and drop the microphone and show everybody how to do it. All right, well, do we have any other thoughts on the Ubuntu phone?
I think that's about it. I think we're pretty much good on the Ubuntu phone.
All right.
I do have a tool of the week that I'm not sure I like, so we're going to skip it.
Oh, really?
But you have a pick of the week.
Oh, man. I like the name. Okay. All right.
Well, I didn't get a chance to try it out enough to really.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Dominic, buckle up. I have a very special pick that I'm very happy with. Now, this is not the cheapest pick we've ever had on this show, but I believe our audience is probably an audience who stares at their screen a lot, and so therefore appreciates a really high-quality display. And I have in the studio now a brand new Woosung. Never heard of them before. Woosung, 27-inch IPS display, LED backlit, and it's, check out the resolution here, it's 2560 by 1440, 27 inches. Now the beautiful thing, $390.
Wow. Now how's the build quality?
It's pretty good. The stand's a little jank.
Okay.
But the picture is amazing. I've never seen a Retina display, aka Retina display, but I imagine this is what the experience is like. It is so clear, so crystal clear. It looks amazing, and for $390 shipped, it is the finest display I have ever seen. And I like the 27-inch form factor. I have a 30-inch cinema display. You know, it's great to have that much real estate, but the thing is like the size of a house. It's huge. It's like having a car on my desk. So the Woosung, being 27 inches, you wouldn't think that makes a huge difference, but it really does. The other nice thing about it is HDMI in, S-Video in, DVI in, VGA in, all kinds of different inputs, built-in speakers, very bright, extremely, but you can adjust it. It's also Windows hardware certified, I guess, for the Windows operating system. It ships from Korea. I bought it from Amazon, and that took them about a week, and I got it. It is just absolutely a great monitor. I can't think of anything better at this price. And you can look at the reviews too. Like the first review is wow. I was blown away by this monitor. It's absolutely fantastic, clear, crisp. IPS panel, perfect for viewing angles, and it is. I have it on a Lazy Susan, and I turn it in the studio, and it looks great from all the different angles. I can't really say anything bad about it. I know one other person who ordered one of these, and he got one dead pixel.
Oh,
I have no issue though. I have no dead pixels. So that's the Woosung 27-inch LED IPS display that has a 2560 by 1440 resolution. Beautiful display, and we'll have a link to that in the show notes. And man, oh man.
Sounds good.
I mean, that was just I needed to replace the monitor because the one in the studio was dying, and that was a great pick. Great pick. All right, Mr. Dominic. Well, I think that wraps up our show, doesn't it?
I think it does.
All right. Well, there's a little bit of the basics we have to cover. Now, Coder Radio is live on Mondays at 9 a.m. over at jblive.tv, noon Eastern. And you can email the show, coderradio@jupiterbroadcasting.com. We need your questions, your thoughts. Let us know if you think of Ubuntu phone and its possible future, and all those kinds of things. And Mr. Dominic, where can people follow you throughout the week?
You can find me at Twitter, at Dumanuku, and on Google+, and at my website, mdominic.com.
Right on. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, and thank you to our live chat room for joining us this week, and thank you, everyone, for tuning into this week's episode of Coder Radio. We'll see you right back here next week.